action plans and integration is definitely where we're going to go today. Everybody has a workbook, so if you don't have a writing utensil, see if you can grab one out of your bag. If you don't have one in your bag, borrow one from a friend, or maybe we might have some extras. But this is going to be interactive, and you're going to actually leave this workshop today with a unique value proposition that you will actually be able to share all over, at work, at home, in the community, because I want you to really be able to explain to people, this is me. So in order to be able to tell someone, this is me, we have to think about first what we love about ourselves. So the flower that you picked, I would love for everyone to pick up their flower. And in your small groups at your table, let's see, the person that is the furthest to the right at every table, stand up. So you decide who that is. Just one person who's the furthest to my right, stand up. It was a test. But go ahead, one person. So one person at your table is going to stand, and they're going to start this little exercise. It's a nice little icebreaker, and it's what I love about me is, and you're going to say it to the table, and then you're going to put it in the vase, and then you're going to point to the next person. We're not going to wait for volunteers because somebody always wants to wait till the last. So we don't have that many people. You've got 2 rules. It can't be anything physical. And it can't be anything about an outward success. It has to be something on the inside of who you are. My example would be what I love about me is my ability to create a safe space inside myself that offers that to others. So you can go deep, you can go high, you can go wide, you can do whatever you want, but it cannot be a physical attribute or an outward success. Okay? If you can't come up with something, you just have to scream, I love me, and just put it in the vase. Okay, so whoever's standing starts, and you're just talking to your table, and you're going to name out loud one thing you love about yourself and put it in the vase. How was that for you all? Give me an adjective. How was it? I got good. I got uncomfortable. What else? What did I hear? Awkward. What else? Positive. Enlightening. Anyone else? Yeah, so we're really not raised with a belief system to talk about what we love about ourselves. And so maybe some of us were. I will be the first to volunteer in the room that I was not. And so what happens when we're growing up, if we're not raised with a belief system to really love who we are, all of who we are, what happens is that wounded self that comes along when somebody does something that hurts us, and it could be small, it could be massive, or it could kind of build up over time, that little wounded small self ends up creating a survivor self. And then that survivor self says, well, we're never going to be funny in front of people again. So that funniness that you bring in the room, you got to hide in the shadows, which creates a shadow self. And then we grow up and we think our survivor self when we go into the adult world is who we really are. Can anyone relate? Work harder, do more, learn more, and there's a lot of doing that happens in leadership development. No one really talks about being. Has anyone given you a being plan for your leadership development? No. So this is where mindfulness comes in, which we'll get there in a minute about the beingness. And so when we've got these parts of ourselves, eventually some suffering comes along, smacks us right upside the head in some way, personally or professionally or both. And then we say, well, what do I do now? And then we want to start to cultivate a healthy self. So you mentioned the word integration. That's actually what I help my clients do is wake up, that's what consciousness is, and then learn to integrate those parts of themselves back together. Because I know I can't be the only person in here that knows there's some stuff in the shadows I don't show very many people. And it's just part of life. And this is why I think we're in a place right now in the world, literally and figuratively, where we're starting to wake up. We've all been suffering. The words trauma and drama before COVID, before 3 years ago, we could list everything that's happened since then. It wasn't something we really talked about a lot in the front of the room. Even with my clients, I had areas where I had to be careful where the boxes didn't touch. Well, we ended up working from where? Home. And did anybody's lives just kind of mesh together? Were you folding laundry while dealing with kids, while trying to be on Zoom, while managing the pet, while dealing with God knows what else? I mean, I'm sure you could give me tons of references here. So everything kind of just started crashing together. And what I love about our crashing together was before, our inner world was over here for most of us, and our outer world was over here. And I used to have so many clients that would come to me and say, well, I got to be a better leader, or I've got to do better at delegation, or whatever they needed to do. And what I would ask them is, do you believe that who you are is how you show up and lead at work? Well, no, who I am at home is different than who I am at work, and vice versa. Well, if you believed that, do you still believe that now? Most people got a little bit of an eye-opener where they realized I was living and working from home, so who I am really kind of just, it's all over the place now. It's not like I get to put on really nice clothes and go into the office and pretend, which is where my survivor self gets to do really well. And then when I get home, that wounded self or shadow self might come out because somebody does something, or I can't watch my favorite TV show, or the kids, or the dog, or the parents, or in-laws, whatever, will then activate something inside of us or trigger something. So this trauma and drama conversation, we now, I think, can collectively say, has everyone in this room over the past 3 years, could you say at some point trauma or drama touched your life? So we're all on level playing field. Well, we didn't, back to this whole I love me. There's a difference in saying I want to learn to cultivate a belief of I love me that's not an ego-based I love me. And I want to just be really clear before we dig into the workbook today. In this world of leadership development, people think the ego is the enemy. There's actually a book about it called The Ego is the Enemy. The ego is actually your survivor self, and really it shows up in all parts of yourself, but its job is to protect you. So I'm hoping as I take you through these activities today, when you leave here, you'll realize the job isn't to cut the ego out of the equation and say you can never show up again. If you do this work correctly, what you can do is invite the ego's energy of protection, that warrior type energy, to actually help you do the hard work to pull it all back together, instead of working so hard to separate it and keep it in parts of your house and in your mind that you hope nobody ever sees. Would anybody like to know how to do that? Does that sound interesting to some of you? All right, well, we're going to dig into this. So you have a workbook right here in front of you. And when Megan and I were talking about this topic, it was interesting. We were literally on a Zoom meeting, still in the COVID, more of a lockdown situation. I think she was battling with shingles. We were both in our Lululemon, at home. We were just here, neck up, kind of no makeup. Zoom's great. Did anybody figure out you didn't have to wear makeup on Zoom? I did. It was awesome. So what I loved about this, she goes, I just want to tell people this is me. And I just want to go back out in the world as we go back into the workplace. I want to just be like, this is me. I wear flat shoes. I wear comfy tops. I even started to change my outfit as I started doing more speaking engagements over the past couple of months. And actually, Leanne's in the room. I've done a lot of engagements with her. You've seen me speak. What do I usually wear when I speak? Suits and heels. Yeah, and very professional, and I come in and I'm very serious. And what I love about what I've learned through COVID, because I also went deeper into the inner work for myself, was this is me. I got up today and was like, I'm just going to try different things on. Suits, done. If you're still wearing them, more power to you. But I got rid of all my suits, and I thought I just want to feel comfortable when I show up. I want to just feel like me. But here's the tricky thing. Do you really know what it feels like to be you? We're going to see if you can find that out today. So we're going to tippy-toe into that. So open up your workbook. The first thing we're going to delve into is just a little overview to help you understand your inner world better. Just like the reference was for the flowers, every single one of the flowers in here you picked up, it uniquely represents who you are. There's a 1 in 34 million chance that someone has the same strengths and talents as you in the world. Do you hear that? 1 in 34 million. If we get into we all know DNA, and with our cells in our body, there is no other you. But if I just talk about your ability to show up to work and do something, a 1 in 34 million chance. So you're very probably not going to possibly meet the other person that has the exact same skill sets and strengths as you. But one thing I noticed that my clients weren't able to do, and what we weren't talking about in leadership development, was understanding what are the components that make us uniquely us as human beings. And so there's some ancient literature, and there's actually 4 components of being human. So if you don't leave with anything today, but hey, there's 4 parts of being human. It was in the workbook. Let's talk about it when you get home tonight. There really are 4. So I want to walk you through those 4, and I'm going to get you at the end of each one to take a minute and just do a little introspection and make some notes to get a little bit clearer about who am I? Who am I when it comes to the components of being human? So this comes right out of my book, by the way, and you saw them out there, and we'll talk about that later. I do a whole coaching program around this, which this is the coaching manual I created. Some of you in the room have already done the coaching process, and then there's a 6x9 book version if you want to do it self-paced on your own. So we'll talk about that at the end. But here's the components of being human. So flip open, and you'll see inside to the right 4 components of being human. The first 2 are biological. So what does that mean? That means, number 1, let's just talk about your brain. Anybody in here know a few things about their brain? Like, did you ever get diagnosed with maybe ADD or a learning disability? Do you know that you don't like to be on tall buildings? Okay, these are all brain things. So I want to give you a little bit of information of what's really interesting about how your brain works. We all have the same brain parts. Okay, nothing about that's different. If you're missing a piece of your brain, you're not in the room today. So everybody has all the same brain parts. But did you know there are actually 13 to 16 different types of brain types? Yeah. So there's a really cool, and you might want to write this down, a little assessment online by Dr. Amen. It's spelled like Amen, A-M-E-N. And you can Google Dr. Amen free brain quiz. So here's the thing about our brain. Different parts of it are firing and wiring together in different ways. When we were little and we started to grow up, how our brains and how we experienced life really molded neurologically what was going on in our beautiful little brains. So I want you to think for a minute what you do know about your brain. And here's some ways you can get there. So for me, I know my brain doesn't like to wake up before 7 a.m. Okay? I'm not an early morning person. That's not a behavior. That's not something I chose to incorporate in my lifestyle. I don't like to see another human being before 9 a.m. I don't want to do complex thinking or speaking or teaching or client work before 10. So I want you to think about, what do you know about your brain? Do you need caffeine in the morning? Are you an early riser? This is not a patterned behavior. We're talking brain stuff. What do you know? Do you not like heights? Do you love adventure? What is it that you know about your brain? And if you can't tap into some of your own knowledge, think about what people, if there are some friends here today that know you, you can ask them. Or think about what maybe friends or family members have said about you, about your brain behavior. And brain behavior shows up in lots of different ways, okay? So I want you to just take 2 or 3 minutes. You've got a little section right here. And I want you to think about, how does your brain work? Are you an early morning exerciser? Do you run out the door and you're an extrovert and you want to meet people? This is brain activity. This is not just personality. So just take a minute and just see if you can jot down, and you can open up the discussion if there's a few things, if your peers are at the table and they know something about you. Or if you need some help, raise your hand and I'll come over and kind of walk you through and guide you. But I want you to just dig into, what do I know about my brain? But I want you to know that your brain is unique to you. If you decide to take that online assessment, Dr. Amen's quiz, it actually tells you, when you answer the questions about, just like what I said, do you get up early? Do you crave sugar? What do you like, stimulants? Whatever. They've done hundreds of thousands of SPECT scans on the brain, and then they can pretty much tell you, based upon the symptoms, what category of brain type you fall into. So I've always been someone who loves to take in massive amounts of information. Well, I didn't realize there's this part of my brain called the basal ganglia that actually, his report said, stays in full throttle high gear all the time. So does that work for me in work stuff? Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Do you think that would work in personal relationships and the ability to let go and just not get overly obsessive and analyze and be on all the time about every little thing? Probably not. So I had to learn that's a natural propensity for my brain. And I needed to learn a way to actually work with that, to say, I'm in a relationship and I need to let this person know I'm kind of naturally prone to anxiety and I'll probably overanalyze a lot of things. If you see me do that, can you just gently just say, hey, you're doing it again? Because before, I didn't know how to say that. So once we get the self-awareness to understand how our brain works, we can actually then modify and work with it to have it work in our benefit. So that's the first one, is the biological aspect of your unique brain. The blood flow, the neurons, the pathways, it's totally unique even though we all have the same parts. And somebody said, or actually you were talking about when we did the introduction, this work is paramount to diversity and justice and equity and inclusion, because until we build a belief system that A, I can completely and unconditionally love myself as the unique person that I am, I cannot learn to do that and love someone else for their uniqueness. Okay? So this is really important work. So the second component that you're going to look at here on the book is genetics. What is it that you know about your own genetics? Now this is where you do get to talk about physical attributes. I have brown eyes. I used to be able to say I have black hair, but it's a process, it's changing. I have, what is it that biologically you know about you and your genetics that come from your family? You might be Italian, you might be Greek. These are all genetics. So I want you to take just a moment. What do you know about your own genetics and your family's genetics, if anything at all? And this is just, again, physical, characteristic, genetic. Maybe there's a history of dyslexia in your family. What is it that you know on a genetic basis about yourself? I have scoliosis. I, come from a family of athletes. I'm deeply intellectual. Everyone in my family has been a PhD. Some of these are genetic. What are the genetic components? And it gives you a little thing in here, just the energy and kind of different physical attributes, things of that nature. So take a moment and just jot down, what do you know about yourself as the second component of being human, about your genetics? Because remember, the first two are biological, one's about our brain, and then the second's about the rest of us. What do you know about your own genetics? And it's a safe space. No one needs to look over your shoulder if you feel like you want to write something like, there's a family predisposition to diabetes, or what is it? What is it that you know about your own genetics? So the first two things, our brain and our genetics, our biology, are very unique to who we are. If you are out in the world and you wish, why can't somebody be a better driver? How come somebody can't be more kind? Why aren't they more patient? Well, I don't know about you, but now that I know this information and I've learned it, that person sitting in the car across from me might have a prefrontal cortex of their brain that is filtering half the information that I am. And you don't have to go running around talking like that, but the truth is, if you do this brain quiz, you'll know better what happens in your brain and in others. Everyone is wildly unique. So now that you're starting to dig in a little bit and understand, it helps you to accept who you are, but it also is a great invitation to remind yourself, I don't know anything about that other person's inner workings. I have no idea. So whether you're doing this in the workplace or at home, before you jump into a judgment, and if it's in a safe space, either share with someone what you're learning about your own brain and biology, or maybe ask somebody. Hey, I noticed, Cynthia, the last couple of times we did a project together, there were a lot of spelling errors, and I'm just wondering, is there anything that you know or want me to know about, is spelling an issue for you, or do you have a challenge with that? And that's just an easy way of inviting someone to say, yeah, actually, I haven't told anybody here at work, but spelling's always been hard for me. Or someone like me going into a project with an engineer, Leanne, and saying, math is not my thing. I will organize, put it on the wall, build it all out. Can you double check my math? Because math is a big struggle for me. So there are lots of ways we can start to talk about this in a safe space so we don't write a story. In the absence of information, people write a story. Okay? So let's knock out the next two, because then I want to get you guys into some interactive work. First two are biological. Second two are behavioral. Right here at the bottom, it talks about make a list of everything you know about just the cultural family of origin experience for you. And a family origin is, did you grow up in a home with a mom and dad? Did you have two dads? Were you in foster care? Did you have one single mom? Are you the middle child of 5? Are you the oldest? Are you the only? So this family of origin is the third component of being human that is unique to you. I didn't grow up in your house, you didn't grow up in mine. Okay? So even if you have a sibling here in the room today, I guarantee you they had a different experience because of their biology of their brain and the way the genetics mixed up, unless you're identical twins, and the time and the year of birth and all these other things. So I want you to just list out, what do you know about your family of origin? And you can start with your nuclear family and maybe expand out once you've exhausted all of that. I have 18 cousins, 6 aunts and uncles. What do you know about the family of origin for the people who actually had input into your life that were a part of your lifestyle and upbringing? Okay? And then you can flip over. Next page, we're going to talk about the fourth component, which is societal and cultural norms. So I want you to make a list of things that you know about starting big. What continent did you grow up on? Canada, or North America and Canada, North America and the United States, Europe, Fiji, I don't know. Where did you grow up? And then from the larger picture, drill it down. What state did you live in? And then keep drilling it down. What city did you live in? Just because you lived in Richmond, Virginia, there are 2 sides to this river. So did you grow up on the north side or south side? You can get into what county. Were you in Goochland? Were you in the actual city in the fan? So I want you to kind of go big and then start narrowing in further, further, further. Were you raised Greek Orthodox? Were you raised Muslim? Were you raised Jehovah's Witness? Think religion. Think about the societal and cultural norms that influenced your life. And this one's easiest to go big and then just drill down small. Are you Jewish? Are you of an indigenous culture? Asian, black, white? This is the work of consciousness. Until we wake up and name it, some of us don't even realize that we're living in it on autopilot. And we think, well, doesn't everybody do what I do? No, they don't. And this is why I said this work is so important to diversity and equity and inclusion, justice, because we're expecting people to show up just like we show up. And we haven't even stopped long enough to say, hey, you're not like me, in a good way. So tell me what it is about you that I need to know a little bit more about so we can have a better working relationship or personal relationship. So these are things that until we learn a safe way to ask those questions and get off of autopilot, we won't know. Because we typically look in a room and we just make an assumption that everyone is like me, and if they're not, I'm going to make them like me. And then if they're like me, like attracts like, so if you're like me, then you're a safe space, so I want to be with you. And I won't go to something that doesn't feel safe or that I can't connect with if I'm operating at an unconscious level and that survivor self is protecting me at all costs, because what threatens me and scares me, I avoid no matter what. So our work right now in the world is to do this, to say, who am I and how can I start remembering and reminding myself, this is me, and sit down and ask you, can you tell me who are you? Okay? So just take one little last second, glance over your 4 answers. I'm going to give you 1 minute at your table. There's a last question here. You can answer it yourself, and if you feel compelled to share it out loud with your table, any awareness arise from just doing this brief little exercise? Is it bringing up anything inside of you or some awareness that you might want to share with the table that is just insightful or has some value for you at this point? And here's the magic thing about consciousness. Once you wake up and you have an awareness, all the hard work is done, because the easy part now is, oh, look at me trying to overgive or overplease again. I don't think I want to do that today. I think I'm going to try on something different. It's just like putting on a different outfit. And so here's something that I want to remind the room as we leave here today, because the worst part I think that we're dealing with in this whole personal development space is we get all excited and it's rah, 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 and then we go home and then we're just deflated and overwhelmed and go back to life as usual and nothing really happens. Anybody have that experience? So you cannot take somebody somewhere in life that they can't first go in their mind. So I cannot take you to a place of don't overgive, read this book, it's so great, until you wake up and go, wait a minute, I didn't ever want to be a cheerleader. And that's the most important work of doing the inner work, is saying, who am I and what do I really want? What's really going on inside of me? Now you can choose, where does that information take you as it relates to who you want to be in the adult world. This is another great example. So I can't come to you, I couldn't have before this moment and said, quit overachieving, it's what's creating all your suffering, because that's a deep value and a belief that you hold is, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. What do you mean, do less and accomplish more? That's ridiculous. But now as you start to get the awareness, the switch goes on and you go from unconscious to conscious, which means from asleep or trance to awake and the ability to do something new. So now you get to have fun and experiment with who you are. What would it feel like to just receive for the next 30 minutes? I'm not going to do anything for anyone. And so this inner work is really, really important. So thank you for sharing that awareness. Some of this stuff almost might sound a little bit simple, or even some of my clients go, this is silly, why do I want to do this? Because until you really know who you are, how can you teach other people how to treat you? And what we're doing as human beings is we're unconsciously projecting our own suffering and our own lack of awareness onto other human beings. So if I don't like what's going on inside of me, I point it out in you. So whenever you're telling someone, I really wish you would do this, or you're so selfish, or you can't see something in someone else unless you too possess it. So I want to repeat that one more time. You cannot point something out in someone else unless you too possess it.
Don't tell my husband.
So, and it doesn't mean it's meant to give you the ability to judge, to self-judge yourself or judge, but here's what I want you to hear about that. Look at me constantly seeing all the selfishness in other people, and part of my life I was there. And what I needed to do was be a little bit more selfish and give to myself. So I was being selfish in certain ways, but I wasn't allowing the selfishness to help me kind of get right with what was going on in here. To wake up every day and look in the mirror and say, I love myself unconditionally, no matter what all the flaws are, but I'm wildly, uniquely me. I'm this flower. There's no other flower like me in the world. So wouldn't we want to nurture it? If the flower doesn't grow in the garden, do you curse and abuse the garden? No, you nurture it, because then the flower's allowed to grow. So the 4 components of being human, 2 are what? Biological, and 2 are what? Behavioral. Again, if that's all you leave with, I've got 2 parts of me that are biological and 2 parts that are behavioral. Can you change your biology? Okay, we might wear colored contacts and bleach our hair or whatever we want to color our hair. Okay, I'm talking really change your biology. No. Can you change your behavior? And here's where you can. That societal cultural norm bucket is where your belief systems are built. I can't change your family of origin. I can't change what you just shared about your birth order. It's a fact. But here's what I can help you to learn to change is, a belief is just a thought you think to the point that you just don't even realize you're thinking it anymore. So I walk in the room and these 4 components of human are my story. Hi, my name is Yedda, and I'm assertive, and you gotta shake my hand, huh? And I'm really, because what I'm saying unconsciously, I'm the oldest of 4, and I'm a survivor, and my mom, we grew up on food stamps, and I work really hard, and you're gonna really like me. I'm gonna do a great job for you. Now, I don't say that out loud to people, but my energy, the people that know me and have seen my own transformation, it was like whoosh. So I bring, and we all bring all these components into every experience we have. So why not back up for a minute and go within and get quiet? And that's why my book's called Shut Up and Sit. That's what I had to learn to do. And find out who I was. What can I change? How many of us have spent countless dollars and years of our life trying to change something only to realize it's a never-ending battle? Okay, so being a woman whose hair is going gray and is turning 50 this year, I spent a lot of time, energy, and money coloring my hair black. And then it would grow in, and it would grow in, and I'd keep coloring, and it would grow in. And one day I woke up and I thought, this is insanity. Guess who's going to win this battle? The hairdresser, and all of my money is going to go to her, or I am. So whatever it is that you have to accept about yourself from this experience, maybe just start to be open to it. What am I now learning about myself? The societal norm piece, and we don't have time to talk about it today. I have a whole video, and I can share it if you want. It's called Becoming a Jedi Master at Work. And I talk about justice and equity and diversity and inclusion and how to build belief systems. Because until we build a belief system that offers these four to the world, we will not go out in the world and show up with the behaviors that do it. Okay? But it first starts with you loving and accepting all of you. Are we all in agreement on that? Okay. So let's move into the second half of what I've got for you, which is, I think it's fun. It's a different kind of fun. We're going to get out of the therapeutic. I have a few of my clients are like, gosh, is it always going to be so deep? Not always. So we're going to bring you back up out of the inner world. Now let's talk about the outer world. So on the next page, you have something called a unique value proposition. I am going to give you a minute at your table. We're not going to go through all the steps quite yet, but I'm going to give you a moment to fill this in to the best of your knowledge with these blank spots, okay? So just take a moment, read it. It says, I am a blank with a strong track record in blank. And it's got a couple examples, strategy, product, whatever, in blank industry. I help blank with blank to, and it gives you some ideas, and then you fill in the what. Your introducing speaker actually did a great job at this. Did she tell you who she was in her role and what problem she solves? She actually gave you her unique value proposition. Now, she did that in the space of her job, but now that you know there are four components of being human and you've gotten a little more inner knowledge about yourself, I'm curious what you might put in this. It might be a little bit different than maybe what you said in the introduction, okay? So give yourself just a moment, and I want you to just go with whatever comes up. This is meant to be intriguing, fun. No one's going to judge you, and I'm not going to force you to stand up and share. But just go with where you're at in this moment. I am a what? And maybe it's I'm a creative thinker. I'm a learner. You might start with a work title. You might start with a personal definition or explanation of yourself. So this is just to get you in the habit to even think about how you would talk about and introduce yourself. Because as I said, you have to teach people how to treat you. Because until they know who you are, they're going to treat you how they treat themselves and vice versa. So we're waking up our consciousness a little bit, but we're also challenging ourselves to think about how do we enter a room and say, this is me, with the spoken and the unspoken word. Okay, so just take a minute. If anyone has a question or if you want to dialogue at the table, if you're stuck on some things, this is the interactive portion. We're working on our action plan, but you're definitely, I encourage you guys to chit-chat a little bit, call on me. I'm happy to come around and help you work through some of the questions or give you some ideas if you'd like. So here's what I would say. I help leaders, if I was going to talk about that, with waking up to their higher self so they can achieve, accomplish, or grow into the leader that they want to be. So it's just asking you to just dig a little bit more. And if you stop short of that, that's okay too. This might be the first pass at it. But this is a way for you to really get a little bit granular. So if we were at a cocktail party and you walked up and said this to somebody, they would quickly get an idea of the value that you bring. And so if you all met Jennifer somewhere and she shared that with you, or if it was a job interview or you're working on a project, you have a really clear idea of her unique value proposition in the business world. So here's what's really great. This is wonderful to do for us as leaders in our professional life, because even though we're the same people, remember there's four components of being human, they show up no matter what your unique value proposition is, okay? But you can have another unique value proposition. They can be in your personal life. Maybe it's in your community. So you can have multiple UVPs. And I want you to remind yourself of that. So if you've already filled it out for your work life, maybe you might want to ask yourself, how might I fill that out for my personal life? If I looked at that, I would say, I am a mother of a 25-year-old man-child with a strong track record in teaching my son to love himself no matter what. In the personal development industry, I help my son with overcoming fears and anxieties to achieve the life and the dreams that he desires as he goes out into the world to become his own man. So these, and here's the thing, own that about yourself. Yeah, I got a dog in January, and it's the cutest little Yorkshire Terrier. And I was married for 20 years, got divorced. We always had boxers. My son grew up with big dogs, and it was great for him as a little boy. So got divorced, sold the house, did a deep dive into the darkness of my psyche, and came out on the other side a few years later, wrote a book about it. You can listen to my podcast to hear all the details. And I decided I would go buy a little townhouse, and I was going to have everything in my house just reflect because your outer world reflects your inner world. Do you know that? So if I walked into your house or your office and you had magazines from floor to ceiling and just a little path, I'd be like, so tell me what's going on and how much space you got in here. Probably not a lot. Things are really cluttered and tight. So I decided that my outer world, my new house, was going to represent all this work I had done to really achieve the awareness of totally accepting myself and loving myself. And so I decided after 3 years in this new house that I'd been on my radar to get this dog. So I got the cutest little Yorkie, and her name is Saja. And so I have been out for a few months with her, and I almost brought her today because I love her so much. But then I was like, no, that would be a distraction. So I put her in the cutest little shirts and sweaters and jackets. She's got a raincoat with little rain boots, and I just decided I was going to have fun with this. So I'm out a couple of weeks ago, and I'm at this little boutique, and I'm holding her, and she's just the cutest, most well-behaved. And I know it sounds a little bougie that I buy her clothes, but I never got a little girl, so I'm giving myself permission to say, you know what, one of the components of being human was I wasn't raised with a lot of fun and love, so you know what, I'm going to do it now. So this woman comes up, and I'm holding my cute little dog, and she's like, oh, your dog is so cute, it's so well-behaved, it's so polite and well-dressed, and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, everybody used to say that about my son, and the thought occurred to me, maybe it's me. She went, what? And I said, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm really good at loving things. Maybe I'm really good that maybe it's not about spoiling my son or my dog. Maybe it feels so loved and content, it doesn't have a desire to screw everything up around it. And they used to say that about my son. So I'm sharing that story with you to say we're not given permission. And then another woman walked up and she started laughing, and I, said, look, I'm being a little bit funny, but what if the truth is I really am good at loving something and taking care of it? And what if we all started going, yeah, that's me. That's what I'm really good at. I know some of you in the room, and I've been to your homes and to different events. I've been to Leanne's. Leanne's really good at hosting people and making them feel thoughtful and notes and every detail, and that's why we should be owning that and celebrating that about ourselves and others. So it sounds funny that I said it, but I thought it's time for me to go, maybe it has something to do with me. Maybe it's not a hoax, that I got lucky twice on two things I love. So what would it look like if you walked around life and you were able to tell people who you really are? In a fun way. Sometimes we can use humor, and I did humor, but the truth was I told the woman, I said, I just really think I'm good at loving things. That wasn't, and she just goes, I never heard someone say that. And I said, I've never said it. And it was meant, and of course, your body language and your tone, and then of course, we struck up a wonderful conversation. But I said, I just have never given myself permission to really think about what am I really good at. So I want you all, this is me, your unique value proposition, your 4 components of being human. Here's the beautiful part about this story, but it relates to everyone's story in this room. All of the stuff that happened in my life that I used to look back and be mad about, why didn't I get this? How come society didn't give me that? And if you read my story or if you go hear it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Very quick little snip. I grew up as a child in a Jehovah's Witness home. So every holiday in school and every morning during the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag, they would say, Yedda, you can't participate, go out in the hall. And so I get into more detail on this in one of my podcasts. I grew up angry at everyone and everything because I never got to participate. Everyone's putting cotton balls on Santa's beard. Y'all are all in there having fun, and I'm sitting under the coat rack. What do you think that does to a very little person? So part of my component of being human was exclusion was part of my norm. However, once I did the work to go within and do awareness around my four components of being human, and I was able to sit down and go, what's my unique value that I bring to the world as a result of that? Well, I may not be somebody who knows how to join everything, but the work I do, if I joined everyone and everything, I wouldn't be able to hold the door open to their psyche and go in with them and come out without getting lost in whatever norm of belonging that they feel like they have to be a part of, because I don't have a belief of what it's like to belong. So and I want to begin to take us to the mountaintop. Here's the reason I share that with you. Wherever you are, whoever you are, this is me, okay, this experience of being me, it has a purpose. The wounds, that wounded self, is the secret and the gateway to the wisdom. Did you hear that? The wounds become your wisdom. And when you see the wisdom and you can step back and look at what happened, then the survivor self can actually shift its energy and say, I don't have to protect you from that anymore. And then the shadow self can start to come out. That part of me that was always interested in loving and taking care of things was the part that I hid away because it wasn't welcome. So when we bring those parts of ourselves back out and we write out our unique value proposition, we can start to, in safe places and in safe ways and in safe relationships, start telling people another story. Same facts, same exact person, same 4 components of being human, but you get to choose how you're going to use that as value to become a victor, or if you're going to stay a victim. So I want to give us an opportunity. We're going to do some Q&A. In the rest of this book, we didn't do it today, but when you get home, if you want to dig in more, these 5 components, I've given you 5 steps to your unique value proposition. Remember, you can write that out for your business. You can write that out for your profession. You can write it out for your family. There are a lot of ways that you bring value into the world. So I want you to use this tool and keep reusing it so that you can learn to tell people, what value do you bring to the world in the uniqueness of who you are?